Well, a couple things. First of all, I think it is very important and interesting to see an international audience together talking about these technologies as they're being deployed. It's very important to have these kind of international dialogues as these are developing. The other thing is there's been a lot of discussion about that WiMAX is an open standard and what that brings into the fourth generation technologies. It is kind of an extension, if you will, of some of the lessons we've learned under Wi-Fi and previous open standards in the past and the benefits of that and how that's bringing into the future technologies and how that's going to be very beneficial for consumers and allow for a lot of innovation and competition. This appears to be a very good kind of networking space for players to get together who want to be providers and to connect with vendors, connect with other providers, develop partnerships. So it seems to be a very good business-oriented event that allows for business development opportunities. Well, Utopian, we've spent our first couple of years acquiring spectrum, which is always a challenge in the U.S., but it's a fundamental step to overcome if you want to get into the business. We've managed to acquire spectrum in about 40 markets within the United States. We cover about 7.5 million population in the areas, mostly in the southeastern part of the United States, but not exclusively. And we are now looking at deploying in about 6 markets in the coming year. And also are involved in a number of partnership relationships with a variety of other providers. So we expect this next year to be quite exciting. It's been a building 2 years for us to get to the spectrum footprint, and now we're starting ready to deploy. We made the judgment that we think WiMAX is going to be the next kind of third wire, if you will. In the United States. The major carriers are going LTE. They're going to control LTE with their deployment, and on others we're focused on smaller markets, and the ability to get the equipment is going to be much slower. We're ready to deploy now, and also we see WiMAX, because of other players and the leadership of Clearwire and Sprint in the space, is really going to provide that alternative to the major carriers, and that's where we wanted to be. We wanted to be able to get into the market quickly. We're also focused on a lot of the smaller markets, and we think there's first mover advantage to take a technology now, because LTE is not going to show up in the smaller markets for quite some time. We'll be the first to deploy 4G in many of these smaller markets, and so WiMAX makes that possible right now in these markets. There are tremendous gaps in the market. There's tremendous gaps within third generation technology in the United States. In fact, there are probably going to be many markets in this country that will not get 3G technology and will go right into 4G. And that's what we intend to do in Utopian, is to be the vehicle to provide that 4G technology in a lot of these markets that have been traditionally left behind. They sometimes don't even have adequate cell phone service and second generation technologies. But we think that with 4G technology and providing mobility and access to all the broadband applications that could be available in a mobile environment, that a lot of these communities, this will, first mover advantage will give us a great opportunity. Well, it remains to be seen how it will be distributed. I think the opportunity it is creating for the industry is a very exciting opportunity, because particularly for those that are focused on the markets that we're focused on, the smaller markets, it's difficult to raise capital. Oftentimes some of these markets that are very underserved, it's hard for the business plan to even pencil out. But with a little bit of government support to help pay for the infrastructure costs, it makes it all happen. So it depends on how it's distributed. If it's distributed well to a lot of companies like ours that are looking at ways to get a little bit of government capital that helps leverage the private capital, it can begin deployment right away. WiMAX really is going to be more kind of population-centered areas. It can work in a rural market, but it's going to work in the population areas of rural markets. It's not. It will be more difficult and more costly for it to cover long spaces of areas where people are not living. So because of the propagation characteristics of it, but it does have great capacity to it, and so where areas we have people that are living in concentrated areas. In many rural communities, people live in towns and the smaller towns, and so it's going to be a great technology. Even for very small towns, it'll be a great technology.